He is the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom. He is Candyman. And hopefully with this review we will not be summoning the Candyman as we have a look once again at the McFarlane Toys Movie Maniacs Series 4 Candyman. I've already had a look at this figure not once, but twice already on this channel. Wanted to give him a second look, or third look if you will, as there really technically is only 3 Candyman movies. I thought it would be fitting that we do a trilogy of reviews on this guy, plus I also have better lighting and camera work. So let's get a better look at the movie Maniacs Candyman. First, taking the tape measure, he's 7 inches in height. And speaking of 3 films, unfortunately, McFarlane Toys decided to use the poster artwork from the last Candyman movie, entitled Candyman 3 Day of the Dead, which I believe was only a direct-to-DVD release. I don't think it actually got theatrical release. Here it is standing on top of, by this point along the game, the kind of lower tier display bases. Yes, the base itself is pretty good, but there's so very little holding the poster in place. It's just a cardboard. And actually over the course of time, the glue has also started to come loose on this. So I may actually just need to take a couple of dabs of hot glue just to kind of keep it back in place. Clearly though, McFarlane Toys made no efforts whatsoever to make this a clean line of glue running along the top. Instead, they just kind of blob it in all the corners. It is very obviously, very sloppily applied here. I suppose you will not see it from the front, as again, that's probably going to be how you're going to be looking at it. It's just unfortunate, though, that they got rid of the backs, because that also prevented the cardboard inserts, which these are always cardboard, from getting bent. I got a little crinkled poster as a result of it. It's a nice looking poster. It's a shame, though, it's based on such a terrible movie. Candyman 3 is the least of my favorite Candyman movies. The second one actually, Farewell to the Flesh, is my favorite of the Candymans. This one just is, well, this movie is terrible. The cardboard, unfortunately, also is not the greatest either. So again, there's your base. I don't think there was an attachment on the bottom. I feel as if this is just as good as it gets. Maybe there was a bottom to it. I would have to go back and rewatch my older reviews of it to see if that would be the case. So let's go ahead and move that out of the way. Yeah, I was going through my storage and I so happened to come across this Candyman, which I knew had been a while since I reviewed him. And I felt, if anything, he deserved a second look. Not only is he a very underappreciated horror icon, in the sense that we have not yet gotten a Candyman 4. We're supposed to get a Candyman 4, just never happened, I suppose. But we have also not gotten any other Candyman figures other than this one right here. By process of that, that would also mean that this is the best Candyman figure that you can pick up. And actually, that may sound like sarcasm, but truly this is one of the best, if not best, Candyman. Unless you could, the only thing I would say deserving of this figure to be upgraded with is articulation in the lower legs. Now, I suppose I've not even attempted to think this out, but I suppose if you somehow could pop the waist off, it does look like it would be a very similar lower leg to, say, for example, Freddy Krueger. If you got yourself a dark, I guess, New Nightmare Freddy lower body, you may be able to makeshift a customization on this. I probably wouldn't try doing that, though. But I do think it still holds up well to this day as an excellent head sculpt. Without question, that looks like Tony Todd. And equally so, it looks like, of course, the Candyman. The Candyman, if you aren't familiar with the character, he was actually more explained, sadly, in the 3rd film than the other 2. But he was I believe he was like an aristocrat who was painting and fell in love with a white daughter. And when it was found out that he was having relations with her, they tortured the man, severed off his hand, doused him in honey, and let the bees kill him. And while that was happening, they were chanting Candyman, Candyman, Candyman. So that's pretty much in a nutshell the Candyman mythos. Unfortunately, again, we don't get any other Candyman movies. I've said Candyman a lot in this review. but we haven't gotten any more movies other than The Day of the Dead, which is just terrible. But again, having a look at his face is stellar. I don't think there's anything I really would change to it, other than perhaps for the fact that I would give him some more articulation. You really can't do too much with his head. You can rotate his head, but that's it. That's all you're gonna get. That's all you're getting, Jack. He does also have a little bandana, his little colored bandana there, or little scarf, I suppose, underneath that. And of course the big reveal, even though I've revealed it already a couple of times over the course of this review, Candyman has the internal torso, the exposed rib cage, covered in bees. And it doesn't really look so much like bees. It looks like strawberry jam, and it's got all these little seeds and stuff in it. I will admit that the bees aren't the most highly detailed, but I guess you get the point. It does enough look like something that you know it should be, so I guess you can write off for the fact that, yeah, okay, that's bees. You can see all his organs, which are decayed. This part here is a little on the sensitive side, so I just move this carefully out of the way. So you can see his organs, his intestines. I don't know if that is accurate to how intestines should look. Kind of looks like it's just a Mod Podge of different sculpts, but again, we're just going to write that off. By the way, excellent additional slick coat of sheen added to that, just to give it that mucusy, wet look to it. Also can be said for the same for the ribs there too. Very, very wet looking, covered in blood. The jacket, by the way, is a soft rubber material, so the reveal actually works perfectly. Versus this being, if this was denser plastic, you'd struggle a little bit more going with that. Candyman's, one of his notable traits is the long jacket with the furred collar up at the top there. This has varied in color from time to time. At times it is brown. Here it's in black. He's also got that also on the cuffs of his sleeves. And again, one of the big features of Candyman is his vicious hook, which looks great. It's sort of undersold here. It doesn't have as many of the nails and other things that had basically the hook lodged into his stump, and then he had all these nails and stuff in it. You get a couple of them, but it's not a whole lot happening here. We would assume that this is his stump here, although it shouldn't stick out that far, but I guess if you look at it from his hand, this hand here, the stump probably should stick in a little bit further, but that's okay. Then we get down to his boots, or shoes. There is mild posability happening there. Love the texturing, by the way, on his jacket. It gives it that sense that it is a real material. You got some creases and stuff in there as well, on the back also as well. It doesn't come with any sort of accessories. I can't think of any accessories that could have come with him. I mean, a swarm of bees would have been ideal, or even a painting, as one of that is the more heavily introduced and pushed elements in the third Candyman film, is the fact that he kind of lives through the paintings, or the paintings kind of give him his energy. It really is not thoroughly explained, but a painting certainly could have gone with this figure as well. Would NECA ever entertain the idea of giving us a new version of Candyman? Very unlikely, I suppose, unless we got ourselves another film. But again, that's just sort of in limbo right now. Tony Todd apparently does want to do another Candyman. It's just a matter of getting all the rights, because I think there were several different rights negotiations and lawsuits and stuff like that. So it's really hard for them to get a hold of the franchise and kind of get things back on track. I think Candyman's Tony Todd does look still young enough, or at the very least, he doesn't look too old, that I think you could still pull it off by having him as the main character here. Having a look at his posability, it's very few and far between. His head rotates all the way around. His arm rotates all the way around. I don't know if you can see it, but the jacket is a separate piece. See right there? It is a separate piece. The arm is attached to the torso, and then the jacket is just sort of draped over top of that. In theory, if you took the arms off, You could take the jacket completely off as well, but again, the sleeves will be still of the jacket, so it won't make too much sense. This arm also rotates over here. The hands rotate actually at the collar, the cuff, rather than at the hands. Here, also the same idea. We open up his jacket just for a second. He does have a waist swivel, which again lends itself to the idea of maybe you could pop that off and do a little bit of customization. I'm not of sound mind and body that I would attempt doing that. And again, we have articulation in the feet. Not a whole lot happening articulation on this guy. Sadly, that's the case with a lot of the McFarlane toy releases when it comes to Movie Maniacs. For the most part, you get good sculpts on these. Some of them are questionable, yes. Yes, that's true. But unfortunately, though, the trade-off is, though, they don't get much in the way of posability. In hilarious irony, we're having a look at this figure a third go-around, and it just so happens that there's only been 3 Candyman films that have been released. Sadly, I will admit that the third film is the worst of the series. I still like Farewell to the Flesh as my all-time favorite go-to Candyman film. I like the first one, but I find that the first one does have a slow pace to it. I like the second one, I think, much more. Candyman 3 is terrible. It's not something I enjoy, I will say that. I think the main character that they picked, which I think is a Playboy Playmate, her acting is just wretched. Tony Todd did his best with the material that was in front of him. And of course they incorporate some more elements to the third film, in which that he is the painter. He's got all those paintings that he sort of gets his energy from, even though they don't really kind of explain that as best as they could. Candyman 3, though, is something that you really should avoid. What you shouldn't avoid, though, is this figure. This is one of the best, if not the best, McFarlane Toys Movie Maniacs that he's released over the years. Some of them, I will admit, age not as well as others. Some of them, like, say, The Crow or Norman Bates, for example, those are rough-looking figures. Today's standards, looking at those now, they look like pretty basic, simple figures. But this one here, this is something very special. The likeness looks exceptionally well. It looks great. It looks exactly like Tony Todd. The sculpt is pretty good. He could be a little bit taller, and of course he could afford a little bit more articulation. But this is as good as we're going to get with this figure release. We're probably never going to get another Candyman unless we get a Candyman 4 released. And then maybe NECA may entertain the idea, but I sincerely doubt it. NECA seems to be the type nowadays that are releasing figures based on what they consider blockbuster hits, something that's going to guarantee collectors to go out on the market and pick them up. They are probably a little bit further than what they used to be back in the day of doing the Cult Classics. Cult Classics NECA probably would have entertained doing another Candyman figure like they did with the Bubba Hoteps and the lesser known characters that from the horror genre. So even if we get ourselves a 4th film, I hope that would be the case, because I really think they need to rectify a lot of mistakes they made in the 3rd one. I don't think we'll ever get another figure of this guy again. So if you can find him, I would highly recommend picking up Candyman and adding him to your collection. Just don't look in the mirror with him and say his name, because that's bad news. It's bad mojo. That's not going to work well for you. Today, though, we were having a look at a 3rd go-around of the McFarlane Toys Movie Maniacs Candyman. It's technically Candyman from Candyman 3, but I'm willing just to dismiss that. They probably could have just replaced that poster with the original movie, or even the 2nd movie. They probably just put that on there because that's the movie that was out at the time that this figure was released. If you guys want to have a look at some of my other throwback videos, which I'm trying to do more and more of, some of these really all-time favorite pieces in my collection, I want to really go back and have a look at them again. So if you haven't had a chance to see all of them up to this point, you can go back and have a look at the throwback playlist, which will show everything that I've done in re-reviews as of late. Make sure you also hit that little subscribe button down below, because that will guarantee you that new videos coming onto this channel. Yeah, I know. The bell notification as well, we'll talk about that. Hit that little bell, ring-a-ling-a-ling, that will guarantee you, or at the best as I could guess, that will guarantee you that when new videos are coming onto this channel, you'll at least be in the know. 100% guarantee, though, is you head over to the main channel, head over to the section that says videos. That's your best bet. That's 100% guarantee that you'll see everything that I've posted up to this point. You'll never miss out. We're going to do some more throwbacks in some future videos, so stay tuned for that. As always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.